Hi, good afternoon. Lots of people are buying glazes, so here's some quick tips if you've not done any glazing before, and a little bit of knowledge which will help you, hopefully. Your glaze comes in containers like this, and it will be one of either a stoneware or an earthenware glaze, whatever it is that you've chosen. Earthenware is a low firing glaze and stoneware is a high firing glaze. Let me explain a little bit more. If you've chosen an earthenware glaze, these are the colours that the glaze will come out when they've been fired, but they don't look like this in the bottle. They look quite dull. If you haven't got a white clay underneath, this was on a white clay, they will be a little bit more subdued, but they'll still be quite vibrant. I've got a pot here which I've painted. When you get your bottle of glaze, just open it up, squirt the glaze out, and you can start using the colours straight away with a brush. The glaze that I've used here, I've already emptied into a container, and it's this bright yellow here. Okay, all I do is paint the glaze on. I've already painted one layer on before I started this video, and this glaze has now dried, and so I can get another layer on. If I want the colour to be really vibrant like this, I need to have 3 layers of colour. So for the best results, you need to paint over this glaze once it's dried, and it only takes seconds 3 times. I'm going to paint on the outside of this pot a different colour. I've got a purple here, and I think it's really nice to make a statement between the inside of your pot and the outside. So this pot has got a yellow inside and a purple outside. As I paint it on, the glaze dries as it gets sucked into the clay body, and as soon as it's gone dry, it will look matte, and that's when you can put another layer on. Now these are low temperature, low firing earthenware glazes. When you bring them back to the pottery, I will actually dip them in a clear shiny glaze that will go over the top. If you want solid colour, then 3 solid layers. Wait for each one to dry and then paint on top. Alternatively, if you want to use it like a watercolour, then with these low firing earthenware colours, you can actually merge the colours together by painting over the top of each other. So you get some kind of spreading of the colour like this. So if you treat low temperature glazes more like watercolours, and that's of course you want the thick solid colour which I described earlier requiring 3 layers, you'll get some quite interesting results. Don't paint the base because it will stick to the kiln if you do. When it's dry, make sure it's really clean by sponging around the base with a sponge, and bring it back to me and I'll put a clear glaze over the top. Alternatively, and the vast majority of you have bought stoneware glazes, you will have bought a glaze which again will come in a container like this, but it might say stoneware on it. Stoneware is a high firing glaze, and most of you have bought stoneware glazes. Now the stoneware glazes in the studio come in containers like this, but I have actually decanted them into these 2-ounce bottles. Again, all you've got to do is put a layer on. I've already got a layer on here. And with the stoneware colours, they're much thicker and you only really need about 2 layers. You can do 3 if you want, but don't go over 3. I think it's nice to differentiate between the outside and the inside with clear colours inside or outside. But it's also quite a good idea to maybe take the inside outside and just bring it over the top like this. You may have noticed on here that I've got some masking tape, and the masking tape is going to create a really clean line between the top and the bottom. I just wait for that to dry, and then I'll peel the masking tape back. I want to wait for it to dry. You can see it's drying very, very quickly so that I can get a second layer on. Now with stoneware being fired to a high temperature of 1250 degrees, unlike earthenware, 1050, it's going to melt and run if you're not careful. So we refrain from painting right to the base of the pot. I'll take this masking tape off now, which I put on earlier, which has created a really nice line. Or we could leave it like that if we wished, or we could choose a different colour to go on the outside, but only paint it down to about there. Leave a good centimetre at the bottom, which has got no glaze on. During the firing, the glaze will sit a little and move downwards, so we don't want it to stick. This glaze is going over the top of the base. I'll just paint one side so that I can get this done quickly. Okay, just like, whoops, just like that. Okay, and I'll take it down here at the base, but just leave a gap. No glaze at all on the bottom. It's drying, and as it dries it becomes matte. But the exciting thing about the stoneware high temperature glazes is if you actually paint them over the top of each other, and we're only talking 2 layers really, in total 3 at the most, like that. So we're hiding that blue layer that's there, we know it's there, but we're hiding it with a layer of the colour on top. Instead of blending like a watercolour, what we'll get is a reaction. So the reaction is something that it will be determined by whichever 2 colours you put over each other, or maybe under each other, and very much will depend on whether you've done it over or under. It will, be different with whichever you've used. And this has got a birch, which is inside. It looks cream, but when you get the colour, it's black. Don't worry about that. It changes in the firing. It's like magic. And the red looks like red, so that's not too much of a surprise. But here what I've got is a sample which shows the red and the birch, and then in the middle a band that overlaps, and that is where there is some reaction occurring. It's very slight, you might not be able to see it very well. This is a perfect example of how a really, really good contrast will give you a very exciting pot, especially when the inside's one colour and the outside's another. So, paint carefully, wait for your glazes to dry between layers. 3 layers for your earthenware colours, your low firing temperature colours, 3 layers for solid colour, or you can do layering of the 2 colours for a watercolour effect. The stoneware tends to only require 2 layers because it's thicker and it's fired to a high temperature. We don't want it to run, and if you put one over the top of the other, then you should get a reaction. Masking tape is a great way of masking an area. You could cut patterns into your pot and paint over them, and the area that you pull the masking tape off will go a really dark toasty colour in the firing and be a super contrast. Good luck. If you've got any problems, just send me a text. Cheers.